Hello, 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 and welcome to all of my Facebook friends. Whether you're viewing me on Facebook or on YouTube, this is Minister Crystal Anderson, and we are on the air. We are live. This is Crystal Clear, our March edition. So take a moment right now while you're coming in the room to like us, to share us with your friends, share us with your family. Let them know that we are here and we are going to be sharing some good information with you today concerning our children. Again, I'm your host and moderator, Minister Crystal Anderson, and this program is brought to you by the women of the Glory to Glory Family Christian Center under the leadership of our apostle, Columbus F. Bland, and our co-pastor, Dr. Katie R. Bland. If you want to plant into the ministry, you can find that information rolling there at the bottom of your screen. And I also want to share with you that every day during the week, Monday through Friday at 7:00 p.m., we are in prayer. That number 669-275-0203. You can join in. You can just listen in. You can leave your prayer requests. Go ahead and like us on our Facebook page, the Glory to Glory Family Christian Center. You can get information about all of our services that are held during the week. We have many live outreach services that you can tune into. And most of all, we need to pray. So join us Monday through Friday on that free conference call number for prayer. So I am excited today. Again, we're going to be talking about our children. And how many of you know that there are so many challenges our children are facing nowadays? And oftentimes we used to overlook them, but we can't overlook our children. Our children are dealing with trauma. Our children are dealing with many challenges in the home. And we have to provide those support systems that they really need in order so that they can succeed. We want all our children to succeed. Joining me today, I have Principal Dawn Cole, who is going to be sharing a lot of information. I'm going to be uh, gathering information from her to share with you on things that are happening in the school, what you can do to help your children. My goal today is that I hope this program will help many of the parents to not only give them resources and give them information that they may not know or be aware of when they're dealing with their children that may have emotional issues, social issues, mental health issues, and concerns, but also to give you hope. Sister Adrian is with us, and she's going to share some things about her journey and her experience that will help bring hope as you're raising children that may have special needs. So right now, I'm going to have both of them to take a moment and just introduce themselves. We'll start with Dawn. Just introduce yourself to the people and just tell them a little bit about you and your background.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Crystal, for having me. My name is Dawn Cole, and I have been an educator for 22 years. I started off as a special education teacher, and I've been held many administrative roles. I am currently a principal, and I love to talk about how to help kids win. And so part of our school's mission and vision is success starts here because we help kids win. And so I would love to just be a resource for anyone in need.
Thank you so much for taking the time out today to do that. And I'm so glad you said that because that was one of the things in preparation that was on my heart. You know, we want all of our kids to win. So I'm going to go to Adrian so that she can also introduce herself. And then we're going to dive right in to this conversation. So, Adrian, if you can introduce yourself to our audience today.
Well, hello. My name is Adrian Fudge, and I am the parent and legal guardian of a young adult with special needs. He's 25 years old now, but definitely went through the journey of special education from the time my son was 3 years old up until he aged out of school at 22. And now we're in transition of transitional housing for him this upcoming summer. So definitely can speak to the ups and downs of being a parent with a child in special education and going through all the process.
Because you said that, Adrian, I kind of want to just still stay on this for a minute. When you say transitional housing, and you mentioned when we were talking before the program started, Dawn was just telling me something about them being able to stay in school till the age of 22 and stuff like that. So if you can just start us out with telling us a little bit about your journey, even from him at 3, and when you first realized he had special needs, and how that went with you even dealing with him in the school system.
So, so you definitely touching on a testimony with my son. He actually suffered from traumatic brain injury when he was 3 months of age. And so I consider him my miracle baby. Was having back-to-back seizures, suffered from brain damage, a clavicle fracture. So he's a walking miracle that he's still here, and God gave him another chance at life. When, we didn't know if he was going to make it in the ICU, 4 days in the hospital, another 8 and out, and never been hospitalized after that. And so me being a young mom, I was away at school when all of this happened, and 18, and didn't know how, I was going to finish out the semester, went through a lot of challenges, and, God just made a way during that time. And so he began to get services and early intervention. So starting from an infant, he walked at 13 months. And when he turned 3, we went through this process where we had to get an individualized education plan, also known as the IEP. And so I met with a panel of professionals. You have your social worker, your psychologist, a nurse, a special ed teacher, and it's a whole team. And so that really kicks off the process in school. And that plan allows your child to get services in school. He was, eligible for transportation services to and from, the before daycare or after daycare facility he was going to. I think I had him in the pre-K program in the city. So he started in Chicago Public Schools. And then we relocated to the west suburbs, and then he ended up in the school system. It was Proviso Area for Exceptional Children, and also known as PACE. And while we were there, I felt like I got really good services and things to kind of take him through his educational journey.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So that's a whole program. You said it was a panel, and you got all of that, the social workers, everything. So are you saying that you had a pretty good experience in school all the way through with getting all of the services you need for your son?
Yeah, I would say there were some challenges when we were in Chicago Public Schools. My son, in his IEP, he was eligible for a one-on-one aid, but there were barriers to getting those back then. They didn't have funding. And so he should have had a one-on-one aid, and he didn't have that. And so I did see some challenges. I felt like he needed a vision itinerant at that time because he did have a vision impairment, and he didn't get that right away. So there were some things that I had to fight for. And so eventually, as time went by and he moved from Chicago public schools to a more, he was still getting a public education, but in a private setting. And so that allowed, I felt like a different environment for him because he wasn't in the public schools anymore like he was in Chicago. He went into a school that was all for children with special needs when we went to the west suburbs.
Okay.
And so we ended up moving back south, and then I found a similar school. It's called Echo, and it was in the south suburbs in South Holland, and they had a very similar makeup as Pace did. And eventually I was able to kind of get that vision services in place. But like I said, some things I did have to kind of keep voicing when we went to those meetings because the IEP meetings were annual. And so each year you would talk about the plan and you would talk about,
So, Dawn, can you talk and share a little bit about that and from your perspective as a principal in dealing in the Chicago public school system, as Adrian was mentioned, the IEP program, and how do you in your school or from your experience as a special ed teacher address those kind of needs?
So first, let me clarify. While I am a principal of a school tonight, I'm speaking as an individual. So I
Okay.
can't speak on behalf of Chicago Public Schools.
Yeah.
I can speak from being an educator. And her son, she said, was 25. And so a lot of things have changed since then in public schools. I will say that the special education process, the referral process, the intervention process is a process that parents go through and students go through yearly. It is based upon availability. So if your child needs to have a hard of hearing teacher, right? If we don't have one available because the system is so big, then that could be difficult. But a lot of delays in services, I will say that I have not experienced that at all. And I work really hard. And I know a lot of educators that work really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. Well, like I said, 25 years or 10 years ago, things have changed a lot for a lot of reasons. There are different laws and policies that govern what schools could do regarding special education, departments and resources and funding. So it is different.
Okay. So one of the things, I know there are a lot of different mental health issues. It's so hard. So during those times, I know sometimes people are concerned and fearful and don't like their child to be labeled, right?
Yeah.
So nowadays, when it comes to people or children being labeled with bipolar disorder or ADHD or, anxiety or whatever the issue may be, is there support for like parents? Because I feel like sometimes there are parents who may be apprehensive about certain things when it comes to care because they don't necessarily want to be scrutinized or they're really concerned about their children being teased or bullied, because they have special needs.
Oh, that's a very real concern that is valid. But I do want to clarify if a child has bipolar or any of those things that you mentioned, ADHD, anxiety, those are things that are diagnosed by a medical doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so the parents would have to bring that diagnosis information from a doctor to the school. And then the school can then start the process to review what the student actually needs. And sometimes the child may need an individual educational plan, or there's another plan called an OHI, other health impaired, that can also provide supports without having a special education label, so to speak. The thing is that students with special needs and all kids learn differently. And I try to use student first language when we're talking about children who have different learning needs. So we use child first language. So we would say a child with autism, not the autistic child. A child with a learning disability, not the LD kid. And so a lot of times people have that. And so we work with families, we work with students in our school. For example, I have a program within my school that I've worked really hard to get into my building so that the children that are in my immediate school zone, the neighborhood, can come to our school if they have more severe learning needs. And so the children in that classroom are like celebrities because we make sure all of the children know them. We have special things for them. We made sure all of the staff members know who they are. We include them on everything. And so we try to make it a very inclusive environment for whoever has a learning disability, whoever is different. We do read alouds, books. There are a lot of books that you can use to read to educate children and adults, right? That it's okay to be different, and that we can still learn and grow together. And so we try to do to demystify that. Since the pandemic, what I have seen just this week, we're seeing a lot, even just all year, we've seen a lot of parents bring their children to school now, as recently as this week, in the second and third grade, and they are coming to school for the first time.
Wow.
And they have significant learning needs. And so we have to start this process. So what we try, and your other guests mentioned early intervention. If a parent sees that their child is not speaking, not walking, not going through those growth milestones, that is something that you need to talk to your pediatrician about immediately. As soon as, under 3, because they can get early intervention services and they are offered free. Sometimes those services can be even rendered in your home, so you don't even have to leave. The therapist will come to your home. And so it's really important to work with the medical professionals that see your children and be honest about what you're seeing and observing so that your children can start supportive therapies early on, because there's been a lot of progress for children who have significant needs if they start therapy and support early enough that they can learn and grow and still live a healthy and happy life. It may be different than what the parent may have envisioned, but you want to give them the best shot at being a functioning person that can contribute to society. And so I would just encourage parents to talk to somebody, to push past any kind of fear that you might think something is wrong with your child. I have one child and she was a preemie, and she was born 6 weeks early, and they thought like, oh, it's going to be all these different things, and I have to go through a lot of doctor's appointments. So I do understand, and I have a lot of compassion for parents when we're giving them this information about their children. But you really do, for the benefit of your children, you really do have to face it head on. And if you can, get somebody to go with you.
What do you mean by that? Somebody
So,
like who? Just like,
so if you know someone, so maybe if the parent is nervous to go to the school or
oh,
go to the doctor and talk about what's going on. Maybe I've seen where a lot of parents, they've had their own issues or bad experiences when they were in school. So they really don't want to deal with the school teachers or therapy people or administrators. So they really have an aversion to that. And
mhm.
so, what I would encourage is to get someone from your church, from your family, a neighbor, if you know somebody. There are even advocacy hotlines that people will come and go with you to talk, to advocate on behalf of your child to get what you need. But take somebody with you. It's just like I advocate for, especially African American people. Take somebody to the doctor with you. You know, if you're elderly, make sure that somebody's going to the doctor to make sure you can catch everything, write things down, ask questions, look up questions to ask if you don't know. Google it. What questions should I ask if my child is struggling in school? You can come up with a whole list. And you really have to um, face it head on, and and there is a lot of help and support, especially in the state of Illinois. And that is really important to recognize that the policies and the government and laws and bills have a big impact on these kinds of services or safety net services. We have a lot of services in the state of Illinois that many other states do not have. And people take advantage of it. But there is a big gap between African Americans and other ethnicities in the rate that they take advantage of the services that are provided.
Hmm. So is there like a place that you know specifically where, or a website or any of those things that you can share for people who may need that additional support? I know even like you mentioned the advocacy, hotline and things like that.
So the U.S. Department of Rehabilitative Services,
Hmm.
they have regional offices. But the best place, a great resource, is the neighborhood school. Yearly schools are supposed to do a service called Child Find. So they are supposed to actively host events to find children who may have special needs. So they do evaluations and assessments. So that's something that you can look up. And then you can also, if you need services and you don't know where else to start, call Easter Seals, the March of Dimes. Those are services that are there in our communities that we see them raise money on TV. They have marathons or shuffles. That is what they're raising money for early intervention.
Wow.
And they do great work with children and families with special needs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Adrian, did you have anything else you wanted that could help in children or from your experience as a parent? Because I know sometimes parents are dealing with shame, or fear, or like not knowing what to do or what to ask. I think that was great advice you gave, Dawn, about taking someone with them, because maybe someone who is impartial, like a family member. I know even going with a loved one, I've been that person to go with the loved one to the doctor. And a lot of times you ask questions that they don't think about, or you may have experience, with some things that'll help bring more information to them that they need. So is there anything else just as a parent? I know you're still, you said you're the legal guardian, Adrian, and, dealing with your whole process. Is there anything you can say that would encourage other parents or give them some information?
Yeah, I was just going to add that when Denzel was young and I was in the west suburbs, I was fortunate to find a young lady who had a child with autism. And she due to having a lack of resources, she started a parent support group. And so through that, I was able to take advantage of respite services. I remember, I think the United Cerebral Palsy Organization used to give free hotel night stays to parents, and just to give them a little respite care. And the person that I used to work with, you may even heard of her. Her name is Deborah Vines, but she has an organization called The Answer. And I've been connected with her for many years since Denzel was young, and she still does advocacy work from the west suburbs of Springfield. And because of her, that kind of empowered me and also inspired me to one day want to start my own nonprofit, because I see lack of support in the south suburbs. And so, anytime I have an opportunity to share with parents, of my experiences and try to help them. I actually have a great nephew that's going through that process right now, getting ready to turn 3 years old and age out of his early intervention. And so I've been supporting my niece in that process. And so I just, like you said, go with somebody, rely on your family members that have experienced the same thing in order to get what you need for your child. And don't be afraid to ask questions, like you said.
Awesome. I want to ask whichever one of you can answer this. I want to pivot a little bit to not only mental health needs or special needs, but to also talk about our community, specifically people of color, where there are other needs. So sometimes children have other needs that may stem from a lack of support in the home. Sometimes they may be acting out due to social issues that are going on as well. So how do educators, or how do teachers, just from your experience, Dawn, deal with that? Is there challenges or programs within the school? Is there protocols of how to kind of help them and intervene when they're dealing with those kind of issues?
Yes. So one of the things that the state of Illinois has commissioned is that all schools should have behavioral health teams. And so on the behavioral health team, you just like if you had you have a team that looks at academic challenges, strengths, weaknesses of students. So the behavioral health team looks at the behavior and the emotional health and social emotional health and well-being of the students. And so we have a referral process. The behavioral health team usually is comprised of like the school counselor and an administrator. For example, my school, I have a full-time social worker, I have a dean, my case manager, I have a high bilingual population, so I have a bilingual coordinator. And so it's like a slice of all the different departments within a school, and they meet at least twice a month and to review discipline data, referrals from teachers and staff members. And then I have been fortunate enough to secure funding, emergency funds for families in need. And so we're able to work with some generous donors who help us to dispense funds without the red tape of going through a large bureaucracy. So that team meets. And then we also educate parents, we educate the teachers, and we've provided for the last 3 years a Handle with Care notice to parents, and we've educated our staff. So it's like a little card, it's a flyer. A parent can send it in and say, hey, look, no questions asked. My child had a rough morning, rough weekend. Handle with Care. They may need to sleep a little longer. They might be tired. They might be agitated. They might need some extra breaks, whatever it is. Handle them with care. And we trained our staff, like if one of those cards come in or a parent calls or emails and says handle with care, no questions asked. we do whatever that child needs, and we provide it, whether it's uniform, books, whatever it needs. We have a washer and a dryer, and then we check in with them, as needed. Also, as a part of being a student, a social worker or counselor can see a child or a family for 6 sessions without having an IEP or a special education designation. And there are also a lot of times community organizations that partner with schools to provide additional support beyond what students with special needs would get. So this is support that is for everyone. So that's how we deal with it. And then we really try to listen to students, and we try to create an environment where students feel like they have at least one person in our building that they can go to and tell something to. So whether that's the lunch lady, the clerk, a teacher assistant, it doesn't have to be a teacher. We've trained them on how to support our kids because, again, our mission and vision is success starts here with every single person in every classroom and every part of our building, because we want to help kids win. So that's what we do. And I know that a lot of schools are working through that to help support students. I would also encourage families, if they are concerned or they want to get ahead of the curve, to volunteer at their child's school. Become familiar. Find out when Teacher Appreciation Week is. Find out when principal or AP appreciation, when clerk day, school counselor. Just send a card. Not something you got to buy anything, but volunteer to be the room mom if you can. Volunteer, once a year if you can only do that, and say, I can come in on these days, so that they know who you are. It makes a big difference when there are challenges. You already have a relationship with those people.
So that's great information. I know a lot of times we don't see that enough, where the parents are spending time to volunteer or to go really see everything that's going on in the school. So that's some good feedback. I was also wondering if there's ever, when there's instances like maybe a child is angry, agitated, like bullying, stuff like that. I know your years in education. Have you seen any impacts of like an increase in like social media issues? Because of course, when we were in school, social media wasn't what it is today. So what are some trends parents should be looking for when it comes to their children pertaining to this new day of social media?
I am so glad you asked that, because social media has tied up a lot of time within schools trying to handle conflicts. And what I would advise parents is to, as much as you can, withstand the peer pressure. Do not allow your children to have their own phone. I would try the very best to limit that, because there is a lot of research on the effects of so much screen time. It actually is rewiring the brain of our children. And the video games, the fast movement, the constant stimulation, it really is laying a foundation that contributes to a lot of the behavior disorders that we see within schools. Children early on are offered tablets, and I get it. Parents are overwhelmed, they're busy. And so this has become a coping mechanism, is to give children a tablet. I mean, as a parent, I've given my daughter my phone, like, okay, here, please, I just need like a break. You can go ahead, But we really need to kind of think about what this is actually doing to children. For example, in the past, because now we collect cell phones, we do not allow cell phones in our building for our students. They can't be out and visible. And it has greatly, just with us initiating that policy, we don't have the conflicts. And then when the conflicts happen, they're usually on the weekend or on breaks. And so when the parents call and they're like, well, what are you going to do? And da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, and I want to have a meeting. I said, okay, I will have a meeting with all of the parents, but I need you to make sure that you disconnect your child's phone. You should see, they're like, oh, they're like, what? Why would I do that? I was like, because they don't understand the boundaries of using this and the access and the privilege of the phone, right? I will also, so it's not only the kids have become so addicted to social media and these cell phones and gadgets, the parents have also become codependent on them being addicted to it. I will also say that when we were on remote learning, we were able to, I could see all 500 of my kids' computers, even though they were at home. There is software that I was able to look at that, and it would scan all of those computers and it will give me a report of keywords and phrases that were flagged and inappropriate for the children. And we were so busy during remote learning doing so many investigations because children were looking at porn on a school district's computer. And because it is software, whenever I would log into it, I would be like, oh, I got to do a report. Children have access to everything. It is if this social media is as if you have left your back door open and given everybody your address to come in. That's what social media is. Your kids have access to everything. There's a back door for everything. There's a back door. They figured it out because somebody on TikTok is telling them how to get around the parent controls. So, and it also is a lot of damage to children's self-esteem because there's so much comparison. And you know what the Bible says about comparison, like we should not compare ourselves to someone else.
Right.
But social media not only has the children comparing themselves, but adults as well. And it's diminishing their self-esteem. So over time, you see this battered self-esteem, and then you have young adults who are struggling with their identities, young adults struggling with who they are, what they're called to do, what they want to do, all of these social pressures, and it stems from social media.
I'm glad I asked that too, because I was just wondering how that plays a part, in nowadays, because that's not something that I think toward the maybe the end of like my older sons, it became a thing. And I was one of those parents that tried to withstand it as long as possible. I think they were like 13, 14 before I was like, okay, I need you to be able to call me, for whatever reason, as you get to work and they're coming home by themselves or, things like that. But I'm like, there's not pay phones anymore, so he's like, oh, I'm gonna let them have a phone. But I can see it being a big deal. And like you said, even with parents, there are so many parents addicted to social media as well. So if they're addicted to it, they're giving it to their children. And I understand what you're saying about the stimulus, because if they're always being stimulated, I feel like it becomes a barrier for education, because then it's like to get them to stop and just like read a book, and just to do normal comprehension and, have that quiet time to just read without all of the, like you said, screen time. I can see that being challenging. So you have to come up with creative ways to keep the children engaged in a new way, probably.
Absolutely. And I also think that our churches can play a great role in helping to support parents in doing this work as well. A lot of times we have resource fairs for housing or health fairs, but I think that churches could do a great service to our community by, bringing in a book fair for children and families, having a read aloud night where, you get a series of books. You can go on Scholastic and they have social emotional titles by grade level and reading to retrain our families, our children, our parents to slow it down. Let's attend to one thing. Let's pay attention. Let's remember. Let's articulate. Let's communicate. Let's think a thought, and I think that that can be very useful to families because children and families with special needs, a lot of times they stay away from the church because think about the environment of the church. It's quiet. Children's church is not equipped, right? Making sure that within your ministries, and I'm a minister, so I also talk this talk, but I walk it as well with my own church. We need to ask parents, invite them in, find out in your congregation, are there people trained who can work with children or who can provide advice to ministries to help to incorporate them even as they become young adults. We should be ministering and serving and providing opportunities for adults with challenges, cognitively and physically impaired people to be able to serve as well, so that we normalize seeing people who look different, but they are all God's children and they can contribute to society. That will help parents not be so into coming forth and getting their young babies help.
I love it. You just came right down through the middle. I love it because that is so true. As you were talking, I was thinking about our ministry and trying to see where I'm glad that we're doing this, and share your comments and your questions. If you have any questions, any parents that are watching, if you have any questions for Adrian, if you have any questions for Dawn, we're going to look at your comments. I know even afterwards, they'll go back and look at the comments and answer some of your questions. They're available to help you, direct you in any way that they can. But this is so good because I think if we look at all of our ministries, as you were talking, I started to think about we have a children's church department, and, what other things can we do? When you said book fair, I'm like, we're always looking for things to, activities and things for them to do. But I think sometimes when we're even thinking about activities, we're thinking about stimulus activities like, let's take them to, some park, party, or, do things like that. That's always keeping them that way. But if you can just take a moment to do a book fair, appropriate for their age groups, like what you were saying, I was like, I wonder if, our children's church pastor, think about things like that. So I know they may look at this. Hopefully they'll see this and even just glean from that and think about some of the things that you said to contribute to that. We have a youth and young adult pastor as well, to be able to think about those kind of things. And when we have young adults that come into our presence that may have certain needs and everything, we have the systems, in place in the ministry, but then to further develop and enhance and have those resources available is awesome. So that's really good. So thanks for sharing that.
I would like to also add, that is you talk about people who need prayer and help and support. You think about there are stories in the Bible what happened to Mephibosheth, I mean, he was dropped, right? What happened? Nobody cared for him, right? His nurse dropped him. So we have to include them into our society. And as African Americans, we don't do that. And we need to be actively looking for opportunities to include people who are different than us, than the whatever you would consider everybody else, but looking for opportunities to serve families who have children with special needs. There's opportunities to volunteer, to be a respite person, to take a child on the weekend so that family can get a break. You look at the statistics of the divorce rate when families, when parents, where there's a two-parent household and there's a child with a physical or mental or educational challenge, the divorce rate is even higher than the 50% than everybody else's. So there's such great opportunity to bring God glory by putting on the lens and looking and being intentional about looking for people who have children with special needs or young adults with special needs or even older adults with special needs.
Yeah. And I think you said you're a minister. I think all of us are. I think Adrian, I think you are as well. I know one of our whole thing is to look for opportunities to serve, that we might glorify God through service and helping others. And I'm so thankful for this conversation because it gets us out of the mindset, hopefully all of those that are in the faith. This show is sponsored by the church. So, we mean Jesus, and we are always talking about loving one another and about serving one another and about working the kingdom of God. But I believe that there are times when we get distracted by so many other things. But what God really loves is the people, it's the relationship and those things that we can do to really reach individuals and not just titles and platforms and, things like that. So I'm really thankful that you brought that out. And I understand, even as you're talking, why God gave me the two of you to be on this panel, because you're bringing a fresh perspective that I hadn't even considered in some ways. Even just when you said be a respite for somebody, someone instantly came to my mind that I know has like a lot of children and things that they're dealing with. And it's not that I don't want to help. I just never thought like, oh, get the kids for the weekend, or something, or do something to give her a break, to help out, in certain areas like that. So it may seem like a simple thing, but it can really have a big impact, on somebody's life, like that. So that's really good. Thank you for that. Adrian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I thought about a couple of things when she was talking that I'm currently experiencing. I have a child that needed a 504. I apologize.
Oh, she okay, Jemiah?
Jasmine. She's wanting mommy's attention, like you said, trying not to simulate them. Yeah, you're 4. I'm trying to finish up, but she close to bedtime too, so she's getting a little restless. But I thought about that I have a child with a 504, and when Don was speaking, I started thinking about a recent situation I had where he was in crisis, and
I'm sorry. Can you explain to us what a 504 is? I don't know what that is.
So it's a behavior health plan, or behavior school plan, education plan. So basically, giving your child a plan where if they needed additional services in school, that they would be able to get those services while in school.
Okay.
And so in my son's case, I fought to get this plan for him before he left elementary school. So in 8th grade, He was high, very academically high honors, but he had some challenges as he began to move into adolescence. And I wasn't in denial about it. And so I sought out services for him. It started in junior high. And he expressed that he wanted to join a group at the school because he had suffered a loss, and not like a physical loss of a parent, but the loss of a parent due to a divorce. And so he started having issues, emotional issues, and, feeling things. And he wanted, there was a social worker on staff, a full-time social worker. So he started to see that social worker very regularly and joined a group at school. And so, he started to go down a downward spiral to the point where I had to seek services. I'm so sorry.
Is she okay, Jazz?
She is being a little extra. I'm gonna try to move around just a little bit. And of course, she want to follow me. I'm sorry, Crystal.
That's okay.
I'm trying to finish my thought. She is not letting me be great. Hold on, give me one second. I'm trying to see. She's upset I left her. But I'm trying to finish my thought in saying that my son needed services, to Don, some of the points that Don was bringing out. And I've been able to benefit from having a team at the school, a social worker, the school psychologist, a dean. I've been able to utilize all of those things while he was in high school. And it's been great because he's, I consider myself using my team to get my son to the stage. And next year, Lord willing, he'll be graduating from high school. And like I said, me advocating for him when he was in elementary school, when the team was pushing back saying, oh, he's honor roll student, he don't need anything. And I said, no, I'm going to fight, because I never know when my son might be in a crisis. He got in an altercation with a student. He walked away from the situation because he had coping mechanisms. He had therapy. And had he not had, access to me while he was in school, said, Mom, I'm upset, I can't stop crying. And me reaching out to all of the team right away to get to him, because I couldn't. I was downtown in a meeting and could not get to my son, but that team was able to react and get to him right away. And so I just thought about all the things that Don was saying, and saying that it's important for parents to watch for signs that their, children are going through things in the home, or like in my case, I, was no longer married to his dad, and that affected him. And so, and it's, I feel like there are times where it still affects him. And so I had to do my job in getting him resources while he's at school. If he have a situation where he's in a crisis mode, that I got a team on standby to support him. And so I shifted from the IEP to having a child with a 504 to help him when he's going through certain behavior things as well. So I've experienced both of them now as a parent.
Thank God. I'm so glad that, again, you're here and you're taking courage and you're not ashamed to tell your story and the different challenges. And I pray that it really helps someone to encourage them and to seek out the help that they need. It seems like in many of these schools, you have programs in place nowadays. You have social workers and things like that that can help and that can assist. So there's no need to be ashamed or feeling guilty or feeling like you're alone. Spiritually, we understand that already, that the enemy always wants you to feel isolated, like you have no one to call on, or no one that's going to help you, or no one understands. But when there's a community of people and resources that you can reach out to, even how Don mentioned the March of Dimes and, all of these different places, I'm so glad that we were able to share that information to help the parents. That's really one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish with today's session, was that we provided some hope and some insight and some information that will help the parents when they're dealing not only with mental illness, but with just behavioral issues. Some children, you might not even know why your children is like aggressive, or they want to fight all the time, or, you have those different, kinds of issues. So it may not always just be regular, what we consider like with diagnosed mental illness, but it can be other challenges that you mentioned, even like just normal things that stem from, divorce, or stem from, things that are going on in the home where they're feeling sad and, depressed. I experienced that as a high schooler. I remember, sometimes it's like lack of money, lack of different things where, meals, you never know why children are responding, the way they are. But I'm glad that, we know that if they can just reach out, don't feel like it's a shameful thing, or don't feel fearful to just ask and let them know. I don't know if all schools have that card that Don was mentioning, where you can say handle with care, but you can inquire, into the school and let them know, call, your teachers, get familiar with those that are interacting. I know with my daughter, one of the big things that happened to her when she was a sophomore, it was a classmate that she had met her freshman year. And it was something similar, like I think the father was abusive to the mother, and they were going through a whole lot of stuff. And he actually committed suicide. And my daughter was broken. It was someone she caught the bus with every day. Like, he was so nice, and everybody just talk about how nice of a student, a friend he was. Oh, he treated me so nice. He was so, this, we saw him every day. And it was literally like they left school with seeing him one day, and then the next day it's like he committed suicide at 15 years old. So if we can identify these things early on, a lot of the children said he talked about like his mom, dealing with a lot of things, and she probably was dealing with so much herself that she missed some things, concerning him, whatever the situation was. I'm not here to talk about that, but I'm just saying the outcome was that he needed help, obviously, and, he committed suicide. So if we as parents, we need to pay attention. Our children experience trauma when we're suffering. Sometimes they're suffering. Sometimes they don't know how to communicate their needs, what they're going through. But they have, even when we look at living in a city like Chicago, where there's so much destruction, around, and, they might just be fearful of going in and out, when people are getting killed, or if something like that is happening, around them. So to create a safe space, I'm glad Dawn talked about, where they have somebody to talk to, even if it's the lunch lady or, people in the home. But one of the things that we really want to do is we want our children to win. We want to love our children. We want them to have a chance at life. We want all of them to feel loved, all of them to feel accepted, all of them to feel included. So as I stop talking and just say a brief reminder that, again, this crystal clear session is being brought to you by the Glory to Glory Family Christian Center. And we are here every month sharing, dealing with testimonies, dealing with topics that may concern you. So if it's something you even might want me to feature, let me know in the comments. Share this. This month, I'm going to pick someone to bless with a nice gift for sharing the broadcast. I'm going to do that this month. So make sure you're sharing this. That's how passionate I feel about getting this information out to people so that they can help our children. Too many are being discouraged. Too many are being cut off. we want to do that in a church, right? We recommend Jesus. We want to spread the gospel and let them know that Jesus loves them and all of that. But there's other things we can do. We can galvanize. We can get people together. Adrian mentioned wanting to start a nonprofit to help support parents that are dealing with these kinds of issues. Matthew 18:10, the scripture that I wanted to focus on today, it highlights, it says, take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones. For I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of the Father which is in heaven. So we should be looking at these little ones, these children, and making sure we are looking to them and not abusing or overlooking any of them. So as we get ready to close, again, leave your comments, leave your questions there. We are happy to see them. And I'm just going to give each of our panelists, again, thank you so much for taking your time, and just give you guys a chance to just give final closing words. I'm going to start with you, Andrea. What would you want to just leave with our viewers today?
I just want to share, that just to end off the conversation, that, I too was a parent at church with my special needs child, and people didn't understand what I was going through. I ended up leaving the church, but I came back to the church, and then I expressed how much I needed their support. And so just want to share with parents that, God hears and knows all, and he will send people in your life to help you and support you, so you don't feel alone. And, sometimes people don't get it all the time, but you can just, share and let them know, just pray for me. And it's not always easy, but if we lean, on God, he'll get us through. And so I just want to encourage parents to just, keep your head up, look to the hills from which come your help, because your help comes from the Lord.
Amen. We serve a God that never fails us. I thank God for that. And Dawn, what would you leave us with as well?
So thank you for the opportunity. I think I would say to parents, it is so important that you have influence, healthy influence, positive influence in the life of your children. It is important that they know your voice. And so one of the ways that you can do that, a simple way, is to do a book reading. You can go on Scholastic, find awesome titles, book titles. They have family packs where you can set aside a time. If you're not reading with your children every night, start with once a week so that they can hear your voice and they can know that you are somebody that they can turn to, because social media and the world is calling them, and they know that voice. And that is who has a lot of our children's attention. So I want to encourage families to do that. I want to encourage organizations, churches, other organizations to look for opportunities to support families who have children, young adults, older adults with special needs. Look at what you're doing and be intentional about being inclusive to them. And let's talk about it.
Amen. I just again want to thank you all for just taking out the time to share and to participate on this panel today. I really appreciate it. And to all of our viewers on Facebook and on YouTube, continue to share and like. And again, we will be back next month for our April edition of Crystal Clear. So until then, I love you with the love of the Lord. See you next time. Bye-bye.